Commander Vex-Nine clicked his mandibles in what his species considered deep contemplation, though to most other races it sounded like someone cracking knuckles underwater. A holographic display in front of him showed a tactical nightmare that would make even the most battle-hardened Krillian weep purple tears of despair. "So let me get this straight," he said, his voice carrying the kind of exhaustion that comes from 3 cycles of sleepless nights and too much synthetic caffeine. The hegemony's finest military minds, with their centuries of tactical expertise and billion-credit war machines, have been getting their shiny metallic posteriors handed to them by a bunch of, what did the intelligence reports call them again? His aide, a nervous Zephyrian named Clicks-42, shuffled through digital files with the enthusiasm of someone preparing their own execution warrant. Sir, the technical term used by our xenobiologists is bipedal mammalian primitives from a Class 12 death world. Though the field reports have been using more colorful language. Vex-Nine's eye stalks swiveled to focus on his aide with the intensity of a predator spotting lunch. More colorful language. Do tell. Well, sir, Lieutenant Crec-7 referred to them as walking nightmares with opposable thumbs, and Captain Year 15 described them as what happens when evolution gets drunk and decides to create the perfect killing machine. The commander's laugh was a sound that resembled grinding metal mixed with the death rattle of a small animal. Perfect. Just perfect. So these primitive beings have somehow managed to turn our supposedly impregnable fortress worlds into smoking craters. And now High Command wants us to request reinforcements from their home planet. That's correct, sir. From Earth. Yes, sir. Overdue. A planet that's classified as uninhabitable by 17 different galactic safety organizations. 18 now, sir. The consortium of reasonable beings added it to their list yesterday after reviewing the atmospheric composition reports. Vex-9 stood up from his command chair, his chitinous exoskeleton creaking like old leather. At nearly 3 meters tall, he was considered imposing by most species standards, though recent battlefield recordings suggested that humans found pretty much everything either cute or something to punch. There didn't seem to be much middle ground with these creatures. "Let me see if I understand the tactical situation," he said, beginning to pace around the command center with the measured steps of someone trying very hard not to lose what remained of his sanity. The hegemony invaded human space expecting to find a primitive civilization that barely understood faster than light travel. Instead, we found a species that treats warfare like some kind of recreational activity. The reports do suggest they have an unusual relationship with combat, sir. Unusual? Vex-9 stopped pacing and turned to face his aide. Clicks. These live on a planet where the weather tries to kill them, the animals try to eat them, the plants try to poison them, and the geography actively attempts to crush them. And instead of developing a sensible civilization that focuses on safety and survival, they invented something called extreme sports where they voluntarily jump off cliffs for entertainment. I've read those files, sir. Quite disturbing. But here's the part that really makes my exoskeleton itch, Vex-9 continued, his voice rising with each word. Despite coming from a world that's basically a cosmic torture chamber, these humans have somehow managed to build one of the most stable and prosperous civilizations in their local stellar region. They've eliminated poverty, disease, and warfare among their own species. They've turned their death world into a paradise. Clicks-42 nodded nervously. The sociological reports are quite fascinating, sir. They seem to have channeled their aggressive tendencies into constructive activities, space exploration, scientific research, artistic expression, and something called competitive cooking shows. And now, Vex-9 said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow managed to sound more threatening than his shouting, "Now we're going to ask these reformed warriors to come back to their old ways and help us fight a war." The command center fell silent except for the gentle humming of life support systems and the distant sound of what might have been someone in the lower decks questioning their life choices. The tactical display continued to show the current state of the conflict, which could be generously described as catastrophic and more accurately described as "why did we think this was a good idea?" "Sir," Clicks-42 said carefully, "if I may ask, What exactly are we fighting that's so dangerous that we need to call in the humans? Vex-Nine's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or might have been the sound of someone's mind finally snapping. Oh, that's the beautiful irony of this whole situation, my dear aide. We're fighting other humans. I'm sorry, sir, could you repeat that? You heard me correctly. It turns out that not all humans agreed with their species' transition to peaceful coexistence. A rather significant faction decided that the galaxy was too boring without regular warfare. So they formed something called the Terran Liberation Front and started conquering star systems for fun. Click's 42's scales shifted from their normal blue-green to a pale yellow that indicated extreme confusion. They're fighting their own species? No. No, you're not getting it. The Terran Liberation Front isn't fighting Earth humans. They're fighting everyone else. Earth humans are horrified by their behavior. The TLF broke away from Earth civilization specifically because they thought peace was boring. They're basically the galaxy's worst nightmare, humans who haven't learned to channel their aggressive instincts into productive activities. So we're asking the peaceful humans to help us fight the violent humans? Exactly. And here's the part that makes me want to molt prematurely. The peaceful humans are apparently much scarier than the violent ones. The aide's scales had now shifted to a color that didn't exist in their species' normal emotional spectrum. How is that possible, sir? Vex-Nine pulled up a series of battle recordings on the main display. Because, my dear Clicks, the violent humans are just doing what comes naturally to them. They're chaotic, unpredictable, and driven by emotion. The peaceful humans, on the other hand, approach warfare the same way they approach everything else, with careful planning, scientific methodology, and an absolutely terrifying level of competence. The first recording showed a TLF raid on a hegemony supply depot. The humans attacked with wild enthusiasm, using brute force tactics and overwhelming firepower. It was devastating, but it was also comprehensible. The second recording showed Earth Defense Force units responding to a TLF attack on a civilian station. The difference was like comparing a natural disaster to a surgical procedure performed by someone who really enjoys their work. The TLF fights like a force of nature, Vex-Nine explained. Powerful, destructive, but ultimately limited by their own chaos. The Earth humans fight like they're conducting a symphony orchestra, except the music is the systematic dismantling of enemy forces and the instruments are weapons that shouldn't exist. Weapons that shouldn't exist, sir. Clicks, these people invented something called a gravity hammer for construction work, when they decided to weaponize it. They created a device that can literally fold space-time into origami. They use it to build playgrounds for their children and to collapse enemy battle cruisers into pocket dimensions. The aide was now a color that suggested he was seriously considering a career change. Sir, if the Earth humans are so powerful, why do they need our help? Because. Vex-Nine said with the kind of smile that would have been terrifying if his species had developed facial expressions. They don't want to solve this problem the efficient way. They could end the TLF threat in about a week, but that would involve some rather unpleasant collateral damage. So instead, they're asking us to help them with what they call a precision operation. What kind of precision operation? The kind where they systematically hunt down every TLF cell in the galaxy, capture their leaders alive, and then spend the next several decades rehabilitating them back into productive members of society. Because apparently, even their criminals deserve a chance at redemption. Clicks 42 was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Sir, these humans sound absolutely terrifying. Oh, they are. But here's the truly horrifying part, they're also the most genuinely decent people you'll ever meet. They'll spend years helping you rebuild your civilization after a war, they'll share their technology freely. And they'll actually listen to your opinions, even when they disagree with them. They're monsters who bake cookies for their neighbors and volunteers who could conquer the galaxy if they felt like it. And we're about to ask them to come help us fight a war. Not just any war, Clicks. A war against other humans. We're asking them to fight their own species to protect a bunch of aliens who invaded their space in the first place. The aid scales had given up trying to display recognizable emotions and had settled on a swirling pattern that looked like someone had spilled rainbow paint on them. Sir, do you think they'll say yes? Vex-Nine looked at the tactical display, where red indicators showed the steady advance of TLF forces toward the core worlds of the hegemony. Clicks, I've been studying human psychology for the past 3 cycles, and there's one thing I've learned about them that's absolutely universal across their entire species. What's that, sir? They have a pathological need to help people who are in trouble, even when those people probably don't deserve it. It's like a species-wide compulsion. They can't help themselves. So you think they'll agree to help us? I think they've probably already started mobilizing their forces. The question isn't whether they'll help us. The question is whether we'll survive the experience of being helped by them. The communication panel chimed with an incoming message from High Command. Vex-Nine accepted the transmission, and Admiral Zork Prime's holographic image appeared in the center of the command center. Commander Vex-Nine, I trust you've reviewed the tactical situation? Yes, sir. It's about as encouraging as a terminal diagnosis. Excellent. Then you understand why we need human assistance. I'm authorizing you to contact Earth Defense Command and request immediate military support. Sir, with respect, are we sure this is a good idea? These humans are. Vex-Nine paused, searching for the right words. They're very effective. Commander, the TLF has destroyed 14 of our fortress worlds in the past month. They're using tactics that shouldn't be possible and weapons that violate several laws of physics. We need all the help we can get. Yes, sir, but have you considered that maybe the reason TLF tactics seem impossible is because they're human tactics, and humans don't really believe in the word impossible? Admiral Zork Prime's image flickered with what might have been amusement. Commander, I've been fighting wars for longer than some species have had writing systems. I think I can handle a few primitive mammals. Vex-Nine and Clicks 42 exchanged glances. Sir, with all due respect, I don't think you understand what we're dealing with here. These aren't primitive mammals. These are humans. There's a difference. Nonsense. Intelligence reports show they only achieved faster than light travel 2 centuries ago. They're technological infants. Sir, in those 2 centuries they've colonized 400 star systems, terraformed 63 planets, and built a civilization that's eliminated scarcity as a concept. Most species take millennia to accomplish what they've done in a few decades. All the more reason to ally with them, Commander. Send the request. The transmission ended, leaving Vex-Nine staring at the empty space where the Admiral's image had been. He turned to his aide, who was now displaying colors that suggested he was contemplating the heat death of the universe. Well, Clicks, I guess we're doing this, sir. Should I prepare the standard request for military assistance? No. If we're going to ask these people for help, we're going to be honest about what we're asking for. Craft a message that explains the situation, acknowledges our mistakes, and formally requests their assistance in dealing with the TLF threat. Should I mention that we started this whole mess by invading their space? Absolutely. If there's one thing I've learned about humans, it's that they appreciate honesty, even when the truth makes us look like complete idiots. Clicks 42 began composing the message, his claws clicking against the interface with the rhythm of someone typing their own surrender. Sir, what should I say about our expectations for their response? Vex-Nine settled back into his command chair and looked at the tactical display one more time. Tell them we need their help, we're grateful for any assistance they can provide, and we're prepared for whatever they think is necessary to resolve this situation. And if they ask about operational command, tell them they can have it. All of it. We're clearly not qualified to fight this kind of war. As the message was transmitted toward Earth, Vex-Nine couldn't shake the feeling that he had just set in motion events that would change the galaxy forever. The humans were coming, and nothing would ever be the same. He just hoped that when this was all over, there would still be enough of the hegemony left to remember what they had learned from this experience. The response from Earth arrived in 18 hours, which was approximately 17 hours and 55 minutes faster than anyone had expected. Commander Vex-Nine stared at the communication panel like it had just grown tentacles and started singing opera. "Clicks, please tell me that's not what I think it is." His aide, whose scales had settled into a resigned shade of gray that suggested acceptance of cosmic absurdity, checked the transmission details. "Sir, it's a priority response from Earth Defense Command. They've marked it as urgent, classified, and oh dear. What now? They've also marked it as educational materials for primitive species. Sir, I think they're making fun of us." Vex-Nine activated the message, and the holographic display filled with the image of a human female who looked like she could bench press a small spacecraft. Her nameplate read Admiral Sarah Mitchell, Earth Defense Command. She wore a uniform that seemed designed more for comfort than intimidation, which somehow made her more terrifying than if she'd been covered in spikes and skulls. "Greetings, Commander Vex-Nine. We've reviewed your request for assistance with the TLF situation, and we appreciate your honesty about the circumstances that led to this conflict. We're prepared to provide immediate support." The Admiral paused, and Vex-Nine swore he could see amusement in her eyes. "However, we feel it's important to clarify a few things before we proceed. First, we're not sending reinforcements. We're sending specialists. Second, this isn't going to be a traditional military operation. We don't do traditional military operations. They're boring." Clicks 42 made a noise that sounded like someone strangling a musical instrument. "Sir, did she just say military operations are boring?" Third. Admiral Mitchell continued, apparently unaware that she was causing multiple existential crises throughout the hegemony command structure. "We're going to need complete operational control, unrestricted access to all TLF intelligence, and permission to use what we call creative problem-solving techniques." "Creative problem-solving techniques?" Vex-Nine repeated. "Fourth, and this is important, we're going to need you to evacuate all civilian populations from any system where TLF forces are currently operating. We're not going to hurt anyone, but our methods tend to be memorable." The message shifted to show a tactical display of the affected systems, with human fleet movements already plotted. "Our first response team will arrive at your coordinates in 72 hours. Please have docking facilities prepared for approximately 200 vessels." 200 vessels? Clicks 42 squeaked. "We're also sending a diplomatic team to discuss post-conflict reconstruction efforts. We've found that it's important to plan for the aftermath of any military action. These things tend to get complicated if you don't think ahead." Admiral Mitchell's expression became almost friendly, which was somehow the most terrifying thing yet. "Commander, we want you to know that we don't hold any grudges about the initial invasion. We understand that it was probably a misunderstanding based on incomplete information. We've all made mistakes when dealing with unfamiliar species. But they're being understanding about us invading their space," Vex-Nine said weakly. "However, we do need to address the TLF situation quickly and decisively. They're using tactics that are giving humanity a bad reputation, and we can't allow that to continue. We have a responsibility to clean up after our own troublemakers." The message ended with coordinates for the rendezvous point and a cheerful reminder to have a wonderful day. The silence that followed was the kind of quiet that usually preceded either enlightenment or complete mental breakdown. "Sir," Clicks 42 said carefully, "what exactly do you think they mean by creative problem-solving techniques?" "I'm afraid to ask, but I have a feeling we're about to find out." 72 hours later, the human fleet arrived exactly on schedule, which was the first sign that everything was about to go sideways. The second sign was that their ships didn't look like warships at all. They looked like someone had taken a normal spacecraft and then asked a committee of engineers, artists, and possibly madmen to improve it. The lead vessel was roughly the size of a small moon and appeared to be powered by something that made local space shimmer with colors that didn't have names. It was followed by a collection of ships that defied every known principle of military architecture. Some were sleek and elegant, others were blocky and utilitarian, and a few looked like they had been designed by someone who had never seen a spacecraft before, but had heard one described by a particularly creative child. Admiral Mitchell's image appeared on the main display, looking exactly as calm and friendly as before. "Commander Vex-Nine, we're ready to begin operations. We've analyzed the tactical situation and developed what we believe is an optimal solution. Admiral, before we begin, could you explain what exactly you're planning to do?" "Of course. We're going to have a conversation with the TLF leadership." Vex-Nine blinked, which was an impressive feat considering his species didn't have eyelids. "A conversation?" "Yes, we found that most conflicts can be resolved through proper communication. The TLF broke away from Earth civilization because they felt their voices weren't being heard. We're going to give them a chance to explain their grievances. Admiral, these people have been systematically destroying entire star systems. I'm not sure a conversation is going to be sufficient." "Oh, we're not just going to talk to them. We're going to demonstrate some alternative approaches to conflict resolution. Think of it as a practical education program." The tactical display updated to show human ships moving toward TLF positions with the kind of precision that made Vex-Nine's mandibles ache. "First, we're going to disable their weapons systems, not destroy them, just make them temporarily inoperable. We've developed some interesting techniques for doing this without causing permanent damage." "How exactly do you disable weapons without destroying them?" "We've learned to be very precise with our gravity manipulation technology. We can create localized fields that make certain types of matter temporarily inert. It's quite effective for neutralizing weapon systems while leaving life support and communications intact." The first engagement began 30 minutes later, and it was unlike anything in recorded military history. When the TLF fleet, which had been terrorizing the galaxy for months, suddenly found themselves completely helpless as their weapons simply stopped working. "Not damaged, not destroyed, just off." "What did you do to them?" Vex-Nine asked. "We convinced their weapons that they didn't want to be weapons anymore. It's a temporary effect, but it gives us time to have that conversation we mentioned." The communication channels suddenly filled with confused and increasingly panicked TLF transmissions. Their ships were intact, their crews were unharmed, but their ability to fight had simply vanished. "TLF Command, this is Admiral Mitchell of Earth Defense Command. We'd like to have a word with you." The response was immediate and not particularly diplomatic. "Earth ships, you have no authority here. We reject your corrupt civilization and everything it stands for. I understand your position, and I respect your right to disagree with Earth's political direction. However, your methods of expressing that disagreement have caused considerable harm to innocent people. We need to discuss alternative approaches." "There is no alternative. The galaxy needs to remember what humanity is capable of when we embrace our true nature." "Actually," Admiral Mitchell said, her voice taking on the tone of someone explaining something to a particularly slow child, "I think you've misunderstood what humanity's true nature actually is." The tactical display showed more human ships arriving, but instead of taking aggressive positions, they began surrounding the TLF fleet in a protective formation. "TLF Command, we're going to show you something. Please observe." What followed was the most bizarre military demonstration in galactic history. The human ships began working together to repair damage that the TLF had caused to nearby systems. They rebuilt destroyed stations, restored damaged planets, and even helped evacuate refugees from war zones, all while maintaining their protective formation around the helpless TLF fleet. "This is what humanity's true nature looks like," Admiral Mitchell explained. "We're builders, not destroyers. We're problem solvers, not problem creators. You've forgotten that." "You've gone soft," came the reply from TLF Command. "You've forgotten what made us strong." "No, we've remembered what made us human. Strength isn't about how much damage you can cause. It's about how much good you can do despite the damage around you." The conversation continued for hours, with Earth ships demonstrating their capabilities by helping rather than harming. They showed the TLF fleet exactly what they could accomplish when they worked together instead of against each other. "TLF Command, we're prepared to offer you a choice. You can continue down this path of destruction, and we'll be forced to stop you permanently. Or you can join us in building something better. And if we refuse, then we'll remove your ability to hurt anyone else, and we'll spend the next several decades helping you understand why that was necessary. Either way, the killing stops today. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, TLF Command responded. What exactly are you offering? That is a chance to be part of something bigger than yourselves. The galaxy is full of problems that need solving, civilizations that need help, and mysteries that need investigating. We could use your skills and experience to tackle these challenges. You want us to become do-gooders? We want you to become human again. The best version of human that you can be. The negotiations took another 6 hours, but eventually, the TLF agreed to surrender their weapons and accept Earth's offer of rehabilitation. The process wouldn't be easy, and it would take years to complete, but it was better than the alternative. Commander Vex-Nine watched the entire process with growing amazement. But, Admiral, how did you know they would agree? Because they're still human, Commander. And humans, even the worst of us, want to be part of something meaningful. They just lost sight of what that meant. And if they hadn't agreed, Admiral Mitchell's smile was gentle, but her eyes showed steel. Then we would have removed them from the equation permanently. We don't enjoy doing that, but we won't allow our own people to hurt others indefinitely. The aftermath of the operation was even more impressive than the operation itself. Earth sent reconstruction teams to every system that had been damaged by the TLF, providing resources and expertise to help rebuild what had been destroyed. They also established educational programs to help other species understand human psychology and prevent similar conflicts in the future. I have to ask, Vex-Nine said during one of his regular briefings with Admiral Mitchell, why are you being so generous with your help? We invaded your space, after all, because that's what civilized people do, Commander. We help each other, even when we don't have to, especially when we don't have to. But surely you must want something in return. We want you to remember this experience. The next time you encounter a species you don't understand, we want you to try talking to them before you start shooting. We want you to consider that maybe, just maybe, there's more to the universe than conquest and domination. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. The galaxy had learned something important about humanity and about themselves. They had learned that strength without compassion was just destruction, and that the most dangerous enemies were often the ones who had forgotten what they were fighting for. As for the humans, they went back to their peaceful existence, secure in the knowledge that they had helped prevent a galactic catastrophe. They had shown the galaxy what they were capable of when they worked together, and more importantly, they had shown that even the worst problems could be solved without becoming monsters in the process. Commander Vex-Nine kept Admiral Mitchell's words in his mission logs, as a reminder of what he had learned from the experience. The most terrifying thing about humans isn't their capacity for violence. It's their capacity for hope. They believe, against all evidence and reason, that any problem can be solved and any enemy can be redeemed. And somehow, they keep proving themselves right. The galaxy was a little bit safer, a little bit wiser, and a lot more hopeful. And that, Vex-Nine reflected, was probably the most human thing of all.